Today we're diving deep into the twisted minds of those who have experienced true insanity. Get ready to be shocked, disturbed, and utterly captivated by these insane true delusion stories. But beware, once you start down this rabbit hole, there's no turning back. It first started with me finding out what Capgras syndrome was. From that point I scrolled and scrolled, looking at the lists of so many different delusions and syndromes. It is truly insane all the different ways in which someone's brain can be rewired. It is quite terrifying to think about. Mary, aged 40 years, was referred for psychiatric evaluation out of concern that a mental health diagnosis was interfering with her ability to appropriately and safely care for her child. That's why today we are going to start by looking at this rare case of Capgras syndrome. The patient had stated on numerous occasions that her 9-year-old daughter, Sarah, had been placed in the custody of Child Protective Services and replaced by an imposter. On occasion, she had shown up at her daughter's school, refusing to pick her up, screaming, "Give me my real daughter, I know what you've done." Mary also reported that she had given birth to twins, but that the hospital record only documented the birth of Sarah. Despite reassurance from multiple healthcare providers and relatives, Mary continued to express concern that her daughter was not, in fact, her own. Furthermore, she related several episodes in which her daughter was whisked away before I could talk to her while going about her daily business. For example, Mary related that a car driven by an unknown person, with Sarah in the passenger seat, passed by her while she was running errands but sped away once she was noticed. Following Mary's initial evaluation, the rare delusional disorder Capgras syndrome was diagnosed. The results of this evaluation indicated that Mary's condition was indeed a delusion, because it was a fixed false belief that persisted over time. Attempts to redirect or foster the development of insight were in vain. Given the patient's suspiciousness regarding her daughter's true identity, social services questioned Mary's ability to parent effectively. Although medication was prescribed, risperidone 2 milligrams by mouth at bedtime, Mary responded poorly, and her delusion persisted. Her medication was subsequently bumped to a total dose of 4 milligrams, also with poor response. Mary's persistence with the prescribed medication regimen was questioned, but the intervals between prescription refills and pill counts failed to suggest that she was non-adherent. After 2 months of regular follow-ups and medication management, she continued to display poor insight into the nature of her illness. She refused to entertain the possibility that Sarah was truly hers, or the possibility that her thought processes were distorted. At that time, the Department of Social Services sought guardianship of her daughter until Mary could be deemed fit to parent. Following the hearing, her daughter was placed into the custody of the Department of Social Services. In response, her daughter replied, "I love my mother except for when she doesn't believe I'm me." During visitations supervised by social services, Mary refused to talk with her daughter, maintaining that she was not Sarah, and that the real Sarah had been hidden away from her. This condition was first described by Joseph Capgras and Ribul Lacho in 1923, and was later named for Joseph Capgras. The specific cause of Capgras syndrome has been hypothesized from neuropsychological and psychodynamic views. Current neurological studies have focused on similarities between Capgras syndrome and prosopagnosia, a neurological disorder in which damage to the right areas in the brain causes impairments in the ability to recognize faces. Some psychodynamic approaches have looked at any hostility the delusional person may have toward the imposter, either directly or indirectly, as the cause of the delusion. Severe anger toward the imposter can lead to the use of splitting as a defense mechanism. In this way, the patient can preserve some of his love for the close acquaintance while still expressing anger by saying that he loves the true person and is only mad at this new faker. This is only one of the many horrific cases documented of this syndrome. For example, a Louisiana father accused of beheading his disabled 7-year-old son was ruled not guilty by reason of insanity, after several experts on mental illness concluded he was delusional and believed that his son was no longer real but had been replaced with a CPR dummy. The little boy had little speech, required round-the-clock care, and was fed through a tube. His dismembered body was found in trash bags. I don't know about you guys, but just the thought of one of my loved ones not recognizing me for me, and possibly becoming hostile, terrifies the crap out of me. The man has believed from the start that he had dismantled a CPR dummy that had taken his son's place, the media said. It all just shows how dangerous delusions and syndromes like these really can be. Next, we uncover another interesting delusion I've stumbled across. Get ready for the insane symptoms and to hear the crazy stories about the next condition and how it can turn lives upside down. Let's dive in. This one is called the erotomania delusion. Typically, erotomania causes a person to believe they have a secret admirer, usually someone famous or of a higher rank than themselves, like a celebrity. A person with erotomania thinks a specific person is sending them special glances or telepathic messages to secretly communicate their desire. Sometimes the person even thinks body posture or the arrangement of objects are signs of the other person's yearning. Erotomania is also said to occur in people with psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. The afflicted person returns this perceived attention by sending letters or gifts or making phone calls or visits to the other person. When these efforts are ignored, the person with erotomania justifies it by thinking the other person is merely trying to keep the potential romance a secret. There are a couple of famous cases of erotomania. One is John Hinckley Jr., the man who attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan in 1981. Hinckley's condition is said to have been focused on actress Jodie Foster. Hinckley became obsessed with Foster after watching the movie Taxi Driver. When Foster attended Yale University, Hinckley moved to New Haven, Connecticut, and stalked her. Unable to establish any meaningful communication with Foster, Hinckley devised several plans to get her attention, including a plan to assassinate Reagan. Just before the assassination attempt, Hinckley wrote this to Foster. "Over the past 7 months, I've left you dozens of poems, letters, and love messages in the faint hope that you could develop an interest in me. Although we talked on the phone a couple of times, I never had the nerve to simply approach you and introduce myself. The reason I'm going ahead with this attempt now is because I cannot wait any longer to impress you." After the assassination attempt, Hinckley was tried for the crime but found not guilty by reason of insanity. Since then, he has spent most of his time in a psychiatric facility, but has had supervised visits at his parents' home. Another famous person said to have erotomania was Margaret Mary Ray, the woman known for stalking both astronaut Story Musgrave and talk show host David Letterman. Ray was charged with trespassing onto Letterman's property 8 times, even stealing his Porsche and claiming to be Letterman's wife. Ray got it herself by kneeling in front of a moving train on October 5th, 1998, truly just showing the devastating effects these delusions can have on your brain. Another case shows how a man in his early 20s fell in love with a semi-famous painter-musician and exchanged Instagram DMs with her. He thought she was in love with him too and was putting messages in her songs about him. Eventually he had came to his senses and seemed to no longer have the delusions, which is good, yet others didn't get out so lucky, as we have seen. This disorder is most often seen, though not exclusively, in female patients who are shy, dependent, and sexually inexperienced. The object of the delusion is typically a male who is unattainable due to high social or financial status, marriage, or lack of interest. The object of obsession may also be imaginary deceased or someone the patient has never met. Delusions of reference are common, as the erotomanic individual often perceives that they are being sent messages from the secret admirer through innocuous events such as seeing license plates from specific regions. Michael David Barrett allegedly had erotomania, stalking ESPN correspondent Erin Andrews across the country, trying to see her and taking lewd videos. Many cases of obsession or stalking can be linked to erotomania, but do not always necessarily go hand in hand. Now let's move on to take a look into another delusion I found, and this one really made my hair stand up while researching the topic. Patients with psychotic depression may have somatic delusions, such as the conviction that one's abdominal organs are decomposing. Such patients are much more likely to be misdiagnosed as having schizophrenia than a physical illness. The somatic delusions of schizophrenia are generally so bizarre, but when a patient with schizophrenia complains of a functional symptom that is not of delusional proportions, a headache or weakness, psychosis may be missed. Making such a diagnosis with a thorough psychiatric history and examination is ordinarily no problem. Somatic delusion is a type of delusion that makes a person believe there is something wrong with their body, either internally or externally. Delusions are false beliefs that people adopt despite the evidence to the contrary. So, in this case, a person may believe they have parasites or bugs under the skin, or that they have health problems even when the doctor says otherwise. It's a type of delusional disorder, but many other mental illnesses can cause it too. The causes of somatic delusions are a combination of genetics, biological factors, and the environment. Somatic delusions may stem from other conditions such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, schizophreniform disorder, shared psychotic disorder, brief psychotic disorder, and many more. Symptoms of somatic delusion usually revolve around believing in the presence of some abnormality in internal or external functioning. A person may spend a lot of time checking their body, or they may change doctors in an attempt to get a confirmation for their beliefs. Other symptoms include developing anxiety due to delusions or feeling like physical exams and medical tests that doctors perform aren't adequate. People also tend to consider normal physical sensations as serious problems that confirm their delusional beliefs. Here is the case of a woman with the delusion. A 67-year-old female with a past medical history including depression presented to the emergency room with complaints of glass in her hands and fingernails. The patient has been evaluated by several physicians in the past without any evidence of glass being found. She was factually able to describe that others viewed her complaints as irrational, but she refused to accept this as truth. Cognitive screening testing was normal, and a physical exam showed several areas of excoriation on the hands and arms bilaterally, a removed left thumbnail, and a thin frame. The patient was admitted to the psychiatry service, where organic causes were ruled out: infection, metabolic abnormalities, drug use. The patient received olanzapine to be taken nightly with adjunctive psychotherapy and experienced acute psychotic relief after a 2-day admission period. She did not endorse any side effects from the medication. The patient believed she might need a skin graft to further remove the remaining glass. She brought a heart-shaped tin can with her to show the glass she removed from her body, but only the removed nail bed was inside. According to the patient, several physicians and family members had counseled her with suggestions to see a psychiatrist, but she did not appear to understand their concerns. The patient stated she had been taking an opioid with some pain relief, but stopped after running out 4 days prior to presentation. It was unknown where she got the medication. The patient also reported an associated 20 to 30 lb. weight loss since her symptoms began. No other complaints were reported by the patient. But that's only just one story of the delusion. For instance, somatic delusions were also observed in the case of a 62-year-old man with a history of believing insects crawling over his body. The patient had dealt with this condition for many years, noting that the insects first started their movement from a portion of his scalp before taking over its entirety and moving onto his face and body. He experienced itching and irritation due to the insect movements. Despite examinations revealing only scratch marks and dry skin, the patient was insistent that the insects were too small to be seen by the naked eye. It's absolutely terrifying what some of these delusions are capable of doing to a person. It becomes very clear that the human mind is a complex and fragile thing, from Capgras syndrome to erotomania delusion, all the way to somatic delusions. Each disorder offers a glimpse into the mysterious workings of the psyche. But amidst the false beliefs, one truth shines through: the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the challenges posed by these delusions, there is hope. With understanding, support, and treatment, those affected by mental delusions can find their way back to the light, reclaiming their lives and embracing the beauty of reality once again.